from the Democratic Senate and leaders from the Democratic House have now put together a massive new financial regulatory bill. The bill is now set to be voted on in Congress next week, and they have promised Obama, both Dirty Harry Reid and Nancy the Piranha Pelosi, that this legislation will be on Obama's desk to sign on July 4th, Independence Day. It is now a tremendous victory for Obama's socialist revolution. And it is no accident, my friends, that it comes on the eve of Obama's visit to the G20 summit in Toronto, where the leading economies of the world and their leaders and finance ministers are now descending to discuss how to confront the global financial crisis. And what is it that the European left, led by France and Germany, and the European Union have been demanding? They have demanded and wanted more taxes upon banks, more government nationalization of the financial and banking sector, more government control of the banks and financial institutions, more regulation, more power, more taxes. In other words, if you can bring in the credit and private capital that finances capitalism and the private sector, you can then choke off capitalism at its very source. If you crush and control the capital, then eventually you squeeze the private sector to death. And that is exactly what this bill does. Barney Frank, one of the key architects of this bill, the man who in the late 1980s had a prostitution ring running out of his apartment through his gay lover, along with Christopher Dodd, who now is so unpopular, so corrupt with his houses in Ireland, with all of his sweetheart mortgage deals that he's been getting from Nationwide and others, that he couldn't even run for re-election in November. Chris Dodd in the Senate, Barney Frank in the House. They have now put together a socialist nationalization financial regulatory bill. And what is so dangerous and explosive in this bill? My friends, it now gives the Treasury Secretary, Tim Tax Chief Geithner, all the power he needs to literally oversee and regulate the entire financial industry. Now the federal government, in particular the Treasury Secretary and the Treasury Department, who of course are beholden to the dear leader, President Obama, now they have the power. Check this out. You want to talk about chilling, arbitrary centralization of power. Now the Treasury Department, led by the Treasury Secretary, can decide which bank or financial firm is either too big to fail or they believe is failing. And if they say it's too big to fail or that they believe it is failing, they can come in and own it and dismantle it. They can either seize it and take it over and give literally perpetual permanent bailouts to their favorite financial institutions and banks, or they can dismantle it and break it up. In other words, the entire financial sector, all of the banks, all of the major financial institutions, the people who provide the very credit, the very capital, the very lifeblood of our free market system, of our private sector, will now be under the heels of the federal government. It is a massive, sweeping power grab. And what is going to happen? Many of you say to me, well, Jeff, I have no sympathy for the banks. I don't give a damn for Goldman Sachs. I don't give a damn for AIG. I don't give a damn for all of these behemoths that were in many ways responsible for the 2008 financial crisis. That's not the issue. The issue, my friends, is now the federal government, as we have seen in Nazi Germany, as we saw in fascist Italy, as we have seen in other socialist states all over the world, Venezuela, Cuba, the former Soviet Union. Now the government dominates, regiments, and regulates and utterly controls all of the sources of financial and commercial power in America. Now, the banks and the financial sector are now beholden to government bureaucrats and the Treasury Secretary himself. Now, you're going to have sweetheart cronyism, where now favored banks, favored institutions like Goldman Sachs, that kick back money to their favorite political supporters on Capitol Hill or in the administration, now they're going to have perpetual bailout funds at their disposal. This doesn't end bailouts. This entrenches the bailout regime. Now all of the favored banks, if you're too big to fail, the government will protect you. And if, for whatever reason, you are a financial industry or a financial firm that the government doesn't like what you're doing, then they can say, you know what, we don't like the way you're operating your institution. We don't like the way you're running your business. And we can seize it because we say you're not operating it properly, you are failing, and we can take it over. My friends, we have just given the federal government and the Obama administration carte blanche, a blank check to literally control, regulate, and effectively nationalize the major banks and financial institutions of this country. If you have that, capitalism itself is next to fall. If you control the sources of capital, if you control the sources of credit, tell me, how the hell are private firms supposed to survive? This is exactly the argument that Republicans are rightly making on Capitol Hill. It's going to prevent access to credit. It's going to hurt the small businessman because now it's going to be harder to get needed investment capital, which create jobs and growth. And so now you are going to squeeze the financial institutions. And what's going to happen? You think they're going to stay on New York? You think they're going to stay in New York City and on Wall Street? You think they're going to stay in Boston? You think they're going to stay on the Northeast? They're already fleeing to Hong Kong, South Korea, Singapore, China, London, Russia, Moscow. My God, the Russians, led by this former KGB butcher, Putin, they have more lax laws and they have a more favorable business environment to banks and financial institutions than we do. The communist Chinese are saying, come on in. You want to do business? We won't ride your back mercilessly. We won't tell you how to run your companies. And now what you are seeing is an outflow, a flight of valuable credit and capital that was once the great engine, the fuel of the American economy. But more than that, my friends, this financial regulatory bill is a massive seizure of power and a power grab on behalf of the Obama administration. It is even bigger than the grab for health care. Now the financial sector has fallen to the control of the federal government. Now they have brought the banks and the financial institutions under their heels. My friends, what is left? And now, once this bill passes Congress next week, Obama will have completed another crucial step in his march to transform America into the United Socialist States of America. My friends, enough is enough. Let us tell Obama, we don't want this financial regulatory bill. We don't want financial socialism. 301-984-9570 is the number.